First things first, we need to attach the eMotimo to the Dana Dolly, and we're going to use this long pin as well as this plate in order to do that. Both of those came in the eMotimo kit. We're going to place the pin through the bottom of the dolly, and we're going to screw them together, and they should secure pretty tightly so that it shouldn't move or swivel in any direction. I'm going to loosen it temporarily and swivel it around so you can get a better view of what I'm doing, and then I'll tighten it back down. Because this uses an ARCA plate, we're going to wedge in the back side first, and then loosen up and drop down in the front side, and then tighten it back down with a knob in the front. It should hold pretty tightly. Next, we're going to take the external pulley motor and attach it to the Dana Dolly. You'll notice that I've labeled it with an S and an L to show the sizes of the screws that I'm going to use, with the S being the small screw and the L being the large screw. And you'll notice that on both sides of the Dana Dolly, there's a place for a large screw hole and a small screw hole. And that's on both sides. You'll notice here on the right side, it's the exact same thing. Either way, we're going to make sure that the large screw is furthest away from the base and the rest of the motor, and the small screw is closest to it. We're going to start with the large screw, and we're going to hand tighten that into place. Once we've got it about halfway, what we're going to do is then switch to the small screw and do the same thing. Make sure that when you're setting these up and screwing them in that you countersink them. That way you're not cross-threading them and possibly doing damage to the Dana Dolly, because it can happen and I'd prefer it doesn't. I'm going to speed this up, but I'm just making sure that they're kind of level as I screw them down so that the entire motor is level. And when I use the screwdriver, I'm not cranking it down, just finger tight. If we look at this tensioner, you'll notice a pin with a 2 on it and a pin with a 1 on it. We're going to be using both of those to route the tensioner belt, this thing, around. And you'll see that in just a moment. But first we're going to undo it and get the very end of it so that we can start routing this thing. So here's how you're going to route the belt on both sides. You're going to go up and over the 2-pin and then curve down and underneath it so you're below the 2-pin and above the 1-pin. Then you're going to curve it back again so that you're going underneath the 1-pin. I'm going to redo that to get some more slack on the line. We're going to move the tensioner further back to the left. That way it's got more movement when we actually need to tension it. It's going to mesh with the teeth on the belt and allow it to pull further. So now we're going to tighten that up, and you should see it's got this reverse S shape to it. And next we'll attach the entire thing to the crossbeam. We're going to make sure that the tensioner nut, the knob, is on the outside of the dolly track, not on the interior. And we're going to keep the bottom square and flush with it. That way that there's no play and distortion with the belt. You'll notice here that with the rest of the belt, it doesn't really line up with the tensioner we've got going on. It's pretty diagonal, so what we're going to do is just flip the entire carriage around. And now it should line up a lot better. The goal here is that there is no diagonal adjustment and that the belt is going directly straight horizontal. And I notice there's still a bit of diagonal play in the belt, so we're going to move the tensioner upwards to compensate for that. And I also notice here that the belt has a bit of a slip around the second pin, so I'm adjusting that. And now it's pretty straight on. And what I'll do here is I'll bring the belt down and around this black pulley, up and over the motor gear so that it meshes with the motor. And once I've got that, I'm going to also bring it down and around this second black pulley on the left side. Make sure that it's tight as possible at this moment in time before we tighten it up on the other side as well. Now on the opposite side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make sure that this nut is on the outside of the dolly track, not on the interior. And what we're going to do here is line it up as best we can with the tensioner on the other side so that the belt is in as straight as a path as it possibly can be. And now here with this second tensioner, we're doing the exact same thing. We're taking the belt, bringing it up and over the 2-pin. Then we're going to take it down and underneath the 1-pin, making sure to move over the tooth clamp. We're going to slot the belt into the tooth clamp so that the gears mesh. Then we're going to move that clamp's tensioner as far over as we can. We're going to tighten it down. We're going to remove as much slack as possible. We're going to tighten the whole thing down, top and bottom, make sure it's flush to the bottom of the crossbeam. And then we're going to make sure the other side hasn't moved at all either, but it's looking pretty sturdy. Now that the belt has been routed, we should look again across the entire thing and note that the belt does not go up or down or sideways. It should be pretty straight horizontally, and you can adjust both sides of the tensioner to get that more in line with each other as you go. This is pretty crucial in order to make sure the belt doesn't slip or cause unnecessary drag. And if you get it right, you'll see that the belt correctly meshes and moves the teeth and gear on the motor. Now's a good time to double check the tension of this belt. Make sure that it's as tight as you can possibly get it. Maybe not so tight that it's about to rip itself in half, but you want this really tight so that the repeatability of the movement is good. Now all we need to really do is hook up the motor to the rest of the eMotimo so that you can power it. We're going to take the cable, bring it kind of up and underneath between the motor and the belt so that it's got the least amount of slack underneath it. Then we're going to take this, look at the pin on the top, and plug that into the M3 port. It'll be the leftmost port right here. Then just align the pin at the top and screw the entire connector in. It's got a screw connector so that it doesn't unlock without you intending to do so. Next, in order to sync the controller, we're going to press the PlayStation button when we power it on. When we do that, it should blink and eventually turn blue. And if you press any of the buttons, you'll notice that the display changes as well. And now if we go to live motion, you'll see it's on user-defined 1. If we take it to fastest, you'll start hearing a hissing sound. And that's because the motors start neglecting audio. It'll say fast, non-quiet mode for VFX. And this is meant to be used with 24 volt AC power. So instead, we're gonna go to user-defined 1, and you can use any of these other modes as well. Just try to stay away from time-lapse and fastest unless you're going to be plugging into wall power. Anyway, we'll exit out of here by pressing the X button. Then we'll go down to program shots. And then where it says start point, we'll select that, and we can choose how we want the camera set up. Say I want it pointing upwards or downwards, and then I'll okay that one. And then I'll go down to the end point. I'll bring that over here. I'll change where it's looking. Maybe it looks further down. And then I'll okay that. Then I'll scroll down to the bottom, all the way to the bottom, and you'll see go to start X. So I'll do that. And now it'll say go X or go X. So we'll press X again, and it should start executing it. It'll show you how many frames and how long the animation will be. And it did it all manually. And now we can say repeat it. Let's do that again. And then it'll do the same movement once again. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do with it. And you can change the speed, you can change how long the duration is. So if I go to reset, it'll undo everything that I programmed, so I'd have to set a new start and end point. But I can also go in and change the duration, how long it takes to start, how long it takes to end, the speed throughout. This is going to be an exact 24 FPS. There might be an option to change that. There is how fast the ramping is from start to finish for the keyframes. The run once shot style, I bet you can change this to ping ponging going from side to side. We're going to keep that at run once. We're not going to add any frames. We're not going to add fizz mode. You can get an extra focus iris zoom adapter that lets you adjust the lens as well. That's not included. Slight correction, there is a fizz unit in here. It only has one gear, so you can only do focus iris or zoom, but it connects the same way as the other motor. This one will connect to the M4 connector here right next to it, and it uses the same connector. And then you'll have to figure a way that this is mounted on. There is a rod connector in the kit, and you might have to figure out how that goes together. I haven't done that part. So yeah, cool. And yeah, that's about it as far as shot programming goes. And we'll get out of here by going all the way to the top. And then there are settings. Most of the time you shouldn't have to change this, but if we're looking here, You can turn on and off specific motors if you want to. This is going to be off, we don't have it. And then after it runs, we're going to tell it to stop. We don't need screen flip. We don't need to save the mode. L1, R1 stops. Let's have it stop all motors just in case. User tuning, we can change the motors. Try not to adjust this. If you feel like you have to, go for it, but try not to. Unless you know what you're doing. Net adapter config, remote, yeah, keep that the same. You can add new remotes if you need to. I don't know if you can use them at the same time, but it is an option if this one starts giving you trouble. And to get out of here, we'll go all the way back to the top. And it'll take us out. And live motion lets you move the camera by yourself. So you can do a couple moves if you want to. Yeah,